Hello one, hello all. Welcome to this July edition of 1999 Best Movie Year Ever. I come to you as always as CP, or Charles, or Hey Fuckface, or What the Fuck's Taking So Long, Dickbag. Any of those I guess I answer to. It's been a while, unless of course you're watching this on some binge in the year 2026, then never mind. These were released quite separate from one another. So without further ado, let's get right into July. To open the month of July 1999, we were greeted with a true story as brought to you by Spike Lee. The film was titled Summer of Sam, which those of us horror hounds, real crime freaks, thought that maybe we were going to get the Son of Sam angle as portrayed through the wonderful vision of Spike Lee. And what this movie ended up being was something of a bunch of shit happened that summer with the backdrop of the Son of Sam case and what a grip it had over New York City. And couples who were having a hard time going out to date, and the New York Yankees, and I don't know, racism. It was a bit of a disappointment for this young CPO. It's not to say that it's the worst thing in the world. I just wish it was maybe titled something different. Summer of Sam was a decent movie. It just, the back and forth between the summer of '77 and, oh, here's a guy who listens to his dog talking. They never really met up, and I don't know. It could have been better, is the best way I can put it. I know plenty of people who are big time fans of this movie, but as far as telling the story of the summer of '77 as seen by a New Yorker, yeah, maybe title it, hey, summer of '77, what a wacky year. Oh, by the way, there was somebody running around killing people. Let's talk about it for 90 minutes. It was later on in the month where American Pie was released, where we started getting those aftershocks of the Columbine tragedy that really started to, or at least in the movie industry, we started feeling it a little bit. They were a bit more strict about letting people in that weren't 18 and making sure people had identification, and, you know, because what happened in Columbine was a bunch of people were trying to get into a party where people were trying to get laid. That was the problem at Columbine, you know, sex and loud music at a party. That's what we need to prevent. Anywho, maybe somebody can tell us a little bit more about this American Pie story.
Oh man, when you talk about movies that define an era, like American Pie is absolutely one of those movies for me. And I was way too young for this to resonate with me. It's strange how much it did. Like I said before, I was 9 years old in 1999, but American Pie, for some reason, just hit at the right time. I was a very mature kid. You know, life forced me to grow up very quickly, so I was knowledgeable on things that I probably shouldn't have been knowledgeable on. So a lot of the jokes inside of American Pie, a lot of the suggestive stuff in that film, I knew right away. I didn't have to go ask dad or mom, like, hey, what's this joke mean? And get that awkward, like, it means this. I remember my grandma used to always hold like bunco nights like once a month at her house. And so whenever they would do that, my grandpa would come over to our house and just kind of hang out and get away from the noise for a while. And I remember one night specifically, I was in our den watching something, probably Disney Channel or some shit. And I just kept hearing this uproar of laughter from the living room with my dad and my grandfather. And after a while, I'm like, what the fuck are they laughing at? What is going on? And I walk into the room, and it was right about the point in the movie where, you know, Jason Biggs does his little dance number. And I'm like, what is this movie? Why are you guys laughing so much? And they're like, no, get out. It's too much for you. You can't watch this. You can't watch this. And, you know, I've said it before. I've watched horror films since I was like 4 years old. So my father was always a lot more unrestricted with me with what I was able to watch. You know, like I said, I was more mature, so I wasn't the type of kid that would watch a bad movie and then go to school and tell my teacher what I saw. American Pie was one of those movies where it just intrigued me. I'm like, why? What is so funny about this damn thing? I gotta figure this out. I must know. And so I'd say within a month or so, I'd kind of caved my dad, and I'm like, hey, can I watch that movie yet? Can I watch it yet? And so I finally got a chance to watch it with all the, you know, I had to sign the documents. You will not tell your friends about this. You will not tell your teachers that you saw this film. And from the opening frame with that tube sock, yes, I knew what he was doing at 9 years old. And just from that point in the movie, like every single joke landed, every single character I resonated with. And it's a movie that it grew with me. Like I was 9 years old, but I still watched that series as it went on, and rewatching the first film especially, there's some jokes that, you know, smaller jokes that maybe I didn't quite get at 9 that I did understand as a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old. But the characters, especially in that film, you have very different like caricatures. You have the ultra nerd in Finch. You have kind of the awkward guy in Jason Biggs' character Jim. You have the jock. You have the extreme jock in Stifler. You have kind of the more normal guy in Kevin that kind of keeps everybody grounded. And I was one of those kids that always kind of reinvented myself a little bit from junior high all the way up to college. So at any point from junior high to college, I was kind of one of those characters. You know, maybe not so much Oz. I was never like a jock, but certain things about that character certainly resonated with me. But all of these characters I could identify with at some point in my life, to where I understood Jim, or I understood Finch being the outcast, or I understood being Kevin, the guy that's kind of like the normal guy in the group, or, you know, I was probably the only 9-year-old you would ever run into that had Steve Stifler on his Mount Rushmore of idols. So it's a movie that has just always been hilarious. Even to this day, I'll still laugh my ass off at all of the big moments. It's got a lot of heart to it, too, that a lot of people don't really talk about. They always talk about the raunch. They always talk about the pie. But there's a lot of heart to what they're talking about in that movie with, you know, the coming of age and that uncertainty about losing your virginity, and like, you know, is it a time limit thing? Is it when the world is right? Is it when you're right? Is it when she's right? A lot of things about that movie, just beyond making you laugh your ass off, just kind of hits home, because all of us have been in situations like any of the situations in American Pie at least once.
Thank you, Cody. And to keep going right into more chaos, that is July 1999. If you watch the prologue or the pilot episode of this series, you'll know a lot of what I have to say here about this. The week later, the Blair Witch Project was released to theaters. The marketing for Blair Witch Project was something of next level, something we had never seen before as far as internet is. At the very least, the internet marketing was something that was so foreign. It wasn't really a tool yet, but this Blair Witch Project had everybody thinking it was real, and it was all over the internet. So if you were on AOL Instant Messenger or I don't know, ICQ, you heard about Blair Witch Project quite a bit, and it had some steam behind it. And I was working at the movie theater for the opening weekend of Blair Witch Project. The Blair Witch Project, working that opening weekend was ridiculous. It was a sensation. I can't explain to you the way you think of Avengers Endgame now is probably what I can compare it to, but you expected Avengers Endgame to be a big deal. Nobody expected Blair Witch Project to be as big a deal as it was. And oh, we had shows going till 3:30 in the morning on Fridays and Saturdays. And that was like every half an hour. There was a midnight show at 12:15, at 12:30, at 12:45, a 1, a 1:30, a 2, a 2:30, and they were selling out. Because asshole teenagers, you guys get drunk before you go to the movies, and a lot of people couldn't handle the way Blair Witch is shot. And, well, I'll just say we cleaned up a couple of rounds of puke that weekend. Or that summer, I guess is what I could say. I remember that opening weekend just being a chore. People getting up, being nauseous, throwing up. You didn't really notice that something special was happening as far as cinema was concerned, because, I mean, essentially we're janitors. Of course, we took time to step into a theater and watch a minute or two here or there, or an early screening here or there. This was the time where studios, the movie industry, they all figured out that, oh, the internet is actually a viable option for marketing, because there was a ton of people ready to watch the Blair Witch Project, which was essentially shot with a handheld fucking VHS camera as filmed by somebody with Parkinson's. It was not a smooth picture at all. The big thing that led the drive to go see this movie was, is it real? Did this really happen? And usually what would squash that is the fact that, are you seeing anything happening on screen? And the thing that kept the spirit alive for Blair Witch Project was, you didn't really see anything. So that plausible deniability was there that, yeah, it might be real because they didn't really show anything too gory or gruesome. It's not like they showed deaths in the movie. So, you know, there was months of that where people thought that, yeah, no, that movie's legit. They just didn't happen to show us anything gruesome. Which, if that was it, then that would have been a neat little moment in time. But as I said earlier, they hired people with Parkinson's to film these movies, and oh, shaky cam. Shaky cam in a dark theater where people are mostly drunk. Not a good combination. Oh, they just kept puking. They just kept puking. And I was the guy who had to go and shovel it up. I don't want to say mop it up, because sometimes it was fluid, most times it wasn't. A couple of days later, there was I don't want to call it a big budget, but it was a film for the masses called Placid, which is a film I've never seen. Giant crocodile, giant sea creature comes along and wreaks havoc on people at the lake. I remember, you know, people going to see it getting a far better response than the other film I have to talk about from mid-July, and that was Eyes Wide Shut. To this day, I jump back and forth on what this film was completely about. A lot of people say it's a dream. It has everything to do with Christmas. There's documentaries saying on just what this movie's about. There's lots of nudity, like lots and lots and lots of nudity. Pretty people being shown at their, well, still prettiest, regardless of whether or not they're dead or naked. Very, very bizarre film that every time Kubrick made a movie, it seems like somebody has to talk about, it's his message about what's going on in the real world. Eyes Wide Shut, I don't know. The movie plays like a dream to me. That's just me. There's so many different elements to the movie that don't quite add up, But it's a Kubrick movie, so why should things add up? I will leave the theories to you, but Eyes Wide Shut is a movie that it didn't do tremendously well. Not to say that it didn't do well, but it was a movie that did quite well when it came out. But I remember the theater I was housed at, it just kind of lingered. It never did great, but it didn't do poor enough for it to leave. So it was just in one of the smaller theaters for weeks upon weeks upon weeks, upon even months. And we just had Eyes Wide Shut lingering in two of our smallest theaters for what seemed like 3 or 4 months. And the movie continues to fascinate. And nobody really has an exact idea as to what the hell this movie's about, mostly because Mr. Kubrick has since passed. And yeah, they didn't make a big deal about people getting into that movie, which is strange, very strange. Teenagers wanting to have sex? No, I need your ID. You want to watch a artful movie about a bunch of people dying who happen to be naked and controlled by this weird, super rich group of people that meet up for incredible orgies? Yeah, we're not gonna follow you in. The weekend of the 23rd brought a handful of comedies, unoriginal stories, so to speak. A remake of The Haunting, which starred Liam Neeson, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Lily Taylor, Owen Wilson. It was a movie. I don't remember people making opening weekend it did quite all right, but it never stuck with very many audiences. It was a film that was, I don't know if it was made for the original audience, but it seemed like the people who were most interested in it were people from that original audience that wanted to see what it would look like with the modern effects. And I saw this movie when it came out. I can't remember very much about it. And boy. But then you had the Inspector Gadget movie, which there was no other Inspector Gadget movie before this, but Matthew Broderick playing the character of Inspector Gadget, whose daughter and dog helped him solve crimes while his car turned into a bunch of things and his outfit had so many different helicopter, umbrella, sure. Obviously a movie for kids, but this is a movie for kids at a time when if you grew up with this, you were already pretty well into your adulthood, so I'll never understand why studios do this, where they wait 15, 20 years on a family film or property that was more popular for the previous generation and then release it to a film for the next generation, which it spawned a couple of sequels, so they did good. I had no interest in it because I was already too old for it. Deep Blue Sea, which caught everybody by surprise, as it was a film that wasn't exactly trying to be Jaws in a territory where everybody thought that's Jaws. You can't make movies like Jaws, and they did, but they didn't. Thomas Jane, Samuel L. Jackson, just making a very different type of shark movie that was still entertaining and carved out an audience of their own. And I want to say it stemmed a bit of a following further than just that movie, but didn't do the homework. I only say that because I haven't seen anything past Deep Blue Sea. And then in the same weekend, as if to define counter-programming, was Runaway Bride with Richard Gere and Julia Roberts, as if to say, hey, remember Pretty Woman? We're gonna bookend this decade with Richard Gere and Julia Roberts making some romantic comedy type stuff, and this time she can't stay settled down, you know, like a prostitute would. But that was the gist of July. July was of 1999. It was packed. It was absolutely packed with choices, packed with things that people may or may not have missed, and certainly some of these films have gone under the radar. Some films have grown interest over the course of time, and we've turned the hump as far as, you know, the big summer movies. And usually August is the first couple of weeks of August is the last hurrah, whereas the second half of August is where we start preparing for a new time for film in the calendar year. So I will try my best to get the next episode, which would be August 1999, printed, done, and released to you as quickly as I possibly can. But do me a favor, comment down below, let me know if there was any movies from July of 99 that stuck out to you. Did something happen to you in July of 99 that perhaps wasn't film related? I can't remember July of 99. I remember cleaning up puke, that's what I remember. And if you want to keep this series going, letting us know with a thumb. A thumb is awesome. A subscribe is awesome. Comment and sand those fingers down before the letters just disappear on your keyboard. That lets us know you're here. You're a Wiliscredia to the very end. And I appreciate you watching this long. Again, I could not have done this without my patrons, who I thank you massively. We will try our best to keep this going and get back on a regular schedule. As you can see, camera back in possession, and we're trying to move forward. And on to August? Yes, on to August. For CP, I've been CP. You haven't. Have a day.